Hi, welcome to the first video of a three-part series on Flutter and Appwrite. In this series, we'll learn how to use Appwrite as a backend for a Flutter app. This series doesn't require you to have any prior experience working with Appwrite, whereas having some experience with Flutter is beneficial. In this video, we'll cover what is Appwrite, installing Flutter, adding Appwrite as a dependency in Flutter, and running it on an emulator. So let's get started. First thing first, what is Appwrite? Well, Appwrite is an open source backend server for web, mobile and Flutter developers. This means all the fundamental functionalities of a backend server such as authentication, database, storage, functions are offered out of the box without requiring the need to write our whole backend services. Some of the main highlights and features of Appwrite is that it's simple, lightweight, great documented and consistent across all platforms. It gives you the freedom to deploy your backend services on your own server. So let's get started with the installation part. Head over to flutter.dev and click on Get Started. Choose your operating system and select the latest available version of Flutter. In my case, it's 3.7.11. Just download this. Once your Flutter is downloading, make sure you also download Android Studio. Click Download Android Studio and App Tools. The time of recording this video, the latest version of Android Studio is Android Studio Flamingo. So please download it. Check the terms and conditions and download your Android Studio. Once your download has been completed, you will see these two folders. Now you need to extract your Flutter Windows Flutter folder, the zip file of your Flutter folder. Once you extract it, you will get this folder. Now what I would be doing is placing this Flutter folder in my C level directory. So just drag and paste this Flutter folder into your C drive. Once you have done that, move to the bin directory of the Flutter folder and copy this path. Now type environment variables in your search bar. Double click on path and add a new path for Flutter. Your Flutter has been installed. Now let's install Android Studio. Double click on Android Studio setup. Just keep clicking. Once your installation of Android Studio has been completed, click Next and launch Android Studio. Now, the Android Studio needs some path where it can install its SDK. In my case, I will be providing it a custom path. So move to your C folder, create a new folder named as Android, and inside Android, create a new folder known as SDK. This is the path where I will be installing my Android SDK. So let's close it. Click on Next. Use a custom mode of installation. Click Next. And now here you need to choose the location of an Android Studio SDK. Now I will select the path which I have just created. So C drive, Android and SDK. Click OK and click on Next. Now just accept all the terms and conditions. Sit back and relax till your Android SDK is getting downloaded. Once your Android Studio has been completed, click on Finish and install the Flutter plugin. just search for Flutter in the marketplace. And install it. Now, before we run our Flutter commands, you have to go to More Actions and click on SDK Manager. For Flutter to work properly, click on SDK Tools and install this third option, which is Android SDK Command Line Tools. Click Apply. OK. And this will download all the command line SDK tools. Once done, click on Finish. Click Apply and OK. Now, we also need an emulator to run our app. So click on More Actions and click Virtual Device Manager. As you can see, we have already been given an emulator of Pixel 3. So before running that, go to your terminal and type Flutter Doctor. Now Flutter Doctor is like literally a doctor for Flutter, which tells about the condition of the Flutter SDK on your system. It checks all the paths, checks all the SDK and gives you a report about what kind of services are missing or what all things are present in your app. So it says that Android licenses are not found. For that we need to run Flutter Doctor Android licenses. So just copy this command and paste it here. Click on Yes. Now let's run Flutter Doctor again. And now you can see we have all the green tick marks. The one cross which we are seeing is on the Visual Studio, which is required if you are developing apps for Flutter. I have not currently installed Visual Studio, therefore it's showing me a cross mark. Otherwise we are good to go. Now just navigate to your desktop directory and type the command flutter create my app. Once you do that, Flutter will create a project automatically in your directory. Now I will be using Android Studio for my development. Let's also start the emulator. And open VS Code. Now just drag and drop your My App folder into VS Code. Make sure you have Flutter and Dart extension downloaded in your Visual Studio Code. Now let's understand the folder structure a bit. On the left side of the panel, you might be seeing several folders. For example, this Android folder contains all the code required for our Android app. This iOS folder contains all the code required for our iOS app. Similarly, it contains folder for Linux, macOS, and web and Windows. The main file which you will be coding is in the lib folder, which is main.dart. This is the starting point of your application. And the one more important file is pubspec.yaml. Think of this file as package.json if you are coming from a web development background. It contains all the path to our resources, our assets, and all the dependency which our app will use. Now just run our simple Flutter app which came by default in a Flutter create command. Just click on run or type Flutter run in the command terminal. So I'm just clicking run here, and let's just wait till our Flutter app launches. In the meantime, our app launches. Let's just install Appwrite. So in the documentation of Appwrite, click on Docs and click on Installation. Now to install Appwrite, you need to install Docker. So on your Windows command, click Docker Desktop and select Docker Desktop for Windows. Click on Save and just wait till your Docker exe file gets downloaded. Once your Docker Desktop has been installed, click on the exe file and install your Docker Desktop. Now let's wait till our Docker Desktop gets installed on our system. Meanwhile, let's check if our Flutter app is currently running or not. Yeah. So now we have a basic application which is a counter app of Flutter, which comes by default when you run the flutter create command. As you can see, once you click on this plus button, the counter increments. Now there are some features of Flutter such as hot reload which allow you to change the UI without changing its state. Suppose if from blue I change the color of the primary swatch to red, you can see the theme of my app changes to red without changing the state of the button counter. Now once our Docker gets installed, we'll install Appwrite and install Appwrite as a dependency in this Flutter app. Now once my Docker has been installed, I will download the Appwrite image using this URL. Just copy this, open terminal and simply paste this command. Now this command will first check for Appwrite locally on a system. Once it will not find any Appwrite image existingly present onto your system, it will download this Appwrite image from the server. So let's just wait till this Appwrite image gets downloaded. Once the Appwrite image has been downloaded, you need to configure the Appwrite for a Docker system. Now we have to choose our HTTP port. I will be selecting the default port, which is 80, and the most of our settings would be a default, and I would be simply entering all the default services or default settings. Now once you're done, open your Docker Desktop. So as you can see, this is our Appwrite image which we recently downloaded. Click on images and this is the Appwrite image. Now let's just wait until it gets started. Go to your browser and click localhost. As you can see, it gives an error that this site can't be reached because maybe the Docker Desktop Appwrite is currently still running, and let's just wait until it completely starts its installation and setup. Okay, now you can see all the processes are running onto a Flutter container image. Let's just reload our local host, and now you will see this Appwrite dashboard. To get started, you need to create an account. So just click on sign up, enter your name, and I will be using my default saved settings, and click on sign up. Now I need to create a first project. Let's name this project as my Appwrite project and click on create project. Once you do that, Appwrite will create an empty project. This is the dashboard of your Appwrite project, and the number you see here is the unique Appwrite project ID of your application. Now once you have Appwrite installed, we can add this Appwrite as a dependency into your Flutter application. We will move along the documentation of Appwrite because, as I earlier said, Appwrite has a great documentation and we will be following Appwrite's documentation throughout this series. So we need to click on this option which says Appwrite for Flutter. So before getting started, let's just click on this Flutter app in which we need to add a platform for our Appwrite project. Click on Flutter app and we need to give a name for our Android app. So where will you find, let's say give it a name as my Android app, and you need to also define a package name. So where will you find this package name? Go to your VS Code, click on Android app and build.gradle. If you scroll down, you will find this application ID which goes by com.example.name of your project. Just copy this and paste it here. Currently I will be registering this Flutter app only for Android, but you can follow the similar step to set up it for any targeting platform such as iOS, Linux, macOS, Windows, web. So click on next, and the next step is to install Appwrite as a dependency into your Flutter. So for that, go to your terminal and type the command flutter pub add appwrite. Once you run this command, Flutter will pull Appwrite's dependency from pub.dev and install it into your project. So where you can confirm that Appwrite is installed as a dependency is go to your pubspec.yaml and you can see Appwrite has been installed as a dependency with its latest version, which is 9.0.0. Now we are done with this step. Click on next, and this is the first point. This is the first set of code which you need to run into your Flutter app so that it initializes the Appwrite SDK into your Flutter app. Click the copy button and go to your app Flutter project. Click on main.dart, and inside our main folder we'll paste this command. Now let's just move this import line outside the main function, and as the name indicates, main function is the starting point of your application. Now let's just restart this application and see if we get any errors. Okay, we are getting some errors. What does it say is that we need to ensure that the Flutter binding is initialized. So just copy this command and paste before you initialize your SDK client. Click on hot restart. Now we are getting one more error which says no implementation found for. So when you add a dependency in a project such as Flutter project, it's always a good practice to just stop the currently running app and run it again. So I have just deleted my project deleted the app which was running and just click run again. Once you rerun our app, you will see you are not getting any error. This means that our Appwrite SDK is currently successfully installed and added as a dependency into your Flutter application. That's all for this video. In the next video, we'll see how we can make a first request to our Appwrite project, which is of authentication and database. So see you again.